Did you know that after 70, there's one silent decision that can either protect your peace or slowly unravel it? It doesn't show up in blood work. No one asks you about it at the doctor's office. But it matters deeply because one of the biggest threats to your emotional health might just be a place you've been invited back into. Today, we're going to talk about the kind of door you should never open again. Stay with me until the end, because this one decision could be the difference between walking in strength or walking into sorrow. And if you've ever felt tempted to reconnect with someone who once betrayed you, this message is for you. Meet Evelyn Martin, age 76, had healed, or at least she thought she had. It had been almost 10 years since she last spoke to her cousin Marion. 10 years since the day Marion promised her a small family investment opportunity. 10 years since Evelyn emptied her savings, money meant for her retirement, and handed it over, trusting the girl she grew up with, trusting love, trusting loyalty, and 10 years since it vanished, along with Marion's phone calls. But one rainy Tuesday, a letter arrived in the mailbox, neatly folded, handwritten. Evelyn, I've missed you. Would love to catch up. Just tea. Just us. M. Evelyn held that letter for hours, not because she didn't know what to say, but because her heart said one thing and her gut said another. She had forgiven, or at least tried to. And part of her wondered, what if Marion had changed? What if time had softened her? What if closure could live in a teacup? So she said yes. And that Saturday, Evelyn stood in front of Marion's door, hands slightly trembling. The house hadn't changed much, still smelled of lavender. The couch had the same lace doily covers. Marion greeted her like old times, with hugs that felt warm, but hollow. At first it was nice. They laughed about old memories, talked about grandkids, and Evelyn felt her guard dropping. But then came the words. I always thought you overreacted about that money, Marion said, stirring sugar into her tea. I mean, it's not like I forced you. We were family. And come on, it was just money. Evelyn blinked. Something inside her cracked, not because it was new, but because it wasn't. There was no remorse, no acknowledgement, just casual dismissal of something that nearly broke her. That night, Evelyn didn't cry, but she didn't sleep either. I thought maybe things were different, Evelyn later told her daughter. But the moment I sat down, I wasn't 76 anymore. I was 66 and ashamed. I felt small again. Here's the truth, dear friend. When someone betrays you, especially after 60, they don't just hurt you, they shake the very foundation you stand on. And if you re-enter their home, their world, without any sign of repentance, what you're really doing is telling them, what you did had no lasting consequence. And when they see that, they do it again, maybe not with money, but with words, with silence, with control. And you're the one who pays the emotional price all over again. And now, remember that. Never go back to the house where you lost your dignity, even if they've set out fresh flowers, even if they say the right words, even if it's just tea, because tea can't undo betrayal. Some people never change, not because they can't, but because life never made them. And the older you get, the more sacred your peace becomes. Don't trade it for false closure. This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's about honoring the version of you who walked through fire to feel safe again. It's about remembering that you don't owe access to anyone who once used your love as leverage. Because your healing, it wasn't a gift they gave you. It was something you earned, with time, with tears, with courage. Don't let one invitation undo all that work. Ask yourself, have you ever been tempted to revisit someone who hurt you, just to see if it's different now? If you have, you're not alone. But just because someone builds a porch doesn't mean you have to knock. Let that door stay closed and protect the peace you fought for. Next, let's come to the story of the house of constant misery. They don't scream, they don't insult. But every time you visit, you leave feeling smaller, heavier, more tired. Not because of what they do, but because of what they refuse to let go of. Welcome to the home of quiet misery, and it might just be the most dangerous place for a joyful heart. Meet George Weller, 81, was known in his neighborhood for his hearty laugh and his worn-down walking stick. He walked every morning, fed the birds on his porch, called his granddaughter every Sunday. But once a week, George visited someone else, his old friend Bill. They had shared decades of friendship, fished the same lake, served in the same VFW hall. Once they'd even double-dated back in 1962, but lately Bill had changed. The curtains were always drawn now. The TV was always on, blasting news reports and doom. Every conversation started with, "You know what's wrong with this world?" And every time George shared something good, his new walking route, his granddaughter's graduation, the cherry tomatoes blooming in his garden, Bill met it with the same grim tone. "Must be nice. Some of us aren't so lucky." George brushed it off, at first, but something strange started happening. After each visit, George walked a little slower, stopped feeding the birds, missed a few Sunday calls. "I just didn't feel like talking," he told his daughter, but deep down he knew the truth. Bill's sorrow had started living in him. It was like being in a house where every wall whispered, "Why even try? South what the experts say." Dr. Elena Morris, a leading geriatric therapist, explained it best. Negativity is contagious, especially in later life. Some people wear despair like a coat, comfortable, familiar, but suffocating. And if you stay in that space too long, you begin to think that coat belongs to you too. Bill didn't mean harm. He didn't try to steal George's joy, but he didn't try to protect it either. And that's what made his home so dangerous. Because after 70, joy isn't just a luxury, it's medicine. Every laugh, every call, every plan, it fuels the spirit. And when you spend too much time with someone who's decided that happiness is impossible, you begin to believe the lie. You begin to dim just to match their room. One Friday, instead of visiting Bill, George walked a different route. He stopped by the local park, watched a group of kids playing tag. He laughed. That night, he called his granddaughter. For the first time in a while, he felt like himself again. He still prays for Bill, still sends him Christmas cards, but he doesn't visit every week because George realized something powerful. You can love someone and still love yourself enough to walk away. Try ask this. Have you ever visited someone and left feeling worse than when you arrived? Have you ever carried their heaviness into your own home? Comment yes below if you've ever felt this, and share how you're protecting your energy now. You never know. Your story might help someone else stand a little taller. And the sequel, the problem with people who don't let you grow up. You've changed, you've healed, but to them, you'll always be the version of yourself who was hurting. And every visit to their home feels like being dragged backward into someone else's memory of who you used to be. Come to the story about Clara's confession. I outgrew my shame, but she didn't let me forget it. Clara Thompson was 74 when she finally felt light again. After decades of shame from a failed marriage, years of silencing her own dreams to raise 3 kids, and battles with insomnia that left her tired for most of her 60s, she'd found her rhythm in the most unexpected ways. She joined a hiking group, learned to make pasta from scratch, fell in love with art museums. For the first time since her divorce at 55, Clara was not defined by loss. She was defined by who she was becoming. Until one afternoon visit to her sister Janet's home changed everything. Clara arrived with fresh strawberries from the market, wearing a colorful scarf she'd bought on a solo trip to Italy. A trip she had once dreamed of when she was married but never believed she'd actually take. Janet looked up from her tea. "Well, look at you, Miss World Traveler," she smirked. "Still trying to reinvent yourself, huh?" Clara paused, unsure how to respond. Later, while flipping through a photo album, Janet pointed to an old wedding picture of Clara, one she had buried deep in her memory. "Back when things made sense," Janet said, "before all the mess." That word, mess, it hit Clara like a stone to the chest. "You used to be so fragile," Janet added, not unkindly, but not lovingly either. "It's nice you're trying again." Trying? Clara wasn't trying. She was thriving. And yet, in that house, around that table, she felt like a woman who had barely made it out of her grief alive. Here's the truth many won't say out loud. Some people, especially those who knew you during your lowest moments, never allow you to move past them. Not because they're cruel, but because they're attached to the version of you that made them feel stronger. If they saw you hurting, It validated their own steadiness. If they offered help back then, it made them feel needed. And now that you've grown, they feel threatened, forgotten, useless. So they cling to the old version of you, the one who was small, scared, shattered. Growth is a beautiful thing, but it comes with loss. Sometimes the thing you lose is not yourself, but the people who refuse to see your evolution. Clara later told her therapist, "I don't want to feel ashamed for getting better, but around her, I shrink every single time." That's the key. If being in someone's presence makes you question your progress, that's not nostalgia. That's emotional sabotage. I will tell you a little about the rule to live by. You do not owe anyone the version of yourself that made them feel superior. You're not trying to be better. You are better. Your healing doesn't need their validation, and your story doesn't need to end with their acceptance. And ask this: have you ever reinvented yourself only to be dragged backward by someone who won't let go of your past? Comment below. What's one way you've grown that others still refuse to see? We see you. And more importantly, you should see yourself clearly too. Next, the one who resents your success. They clap when you walk in. They say the right things. But behind the tight smile is tension. And every compliment feels like it's wearing a mask. You leave their home wondering, did I just do something wrong by doing well? I will tell you the story about Diane, the smile that wasn't a smile. At 78, Diane finally did something for herself. She enrolled in a beginner French class at the local library. Every Tuesday at 10 a.m., she sat in a circle of retirees sounding out words like bonjour and fromage, giggling like a schoolgirl. And it lit something inside her, a spark she hadn't felt since her 30s. It reminded her that she was still learning, still growing, still becoming. She was proud of herself. So when she bumped into her old neighbor Linda at the grocery store, she shared the news with a beaming smile. "I've started learning French," she said. Linda laughed. "At our age? What for?" Just 4 words, but Diane felt them like a slap. That night, she didn't open her workbook. She didn't go to class the next week. You see, that wasn't concern. That was resentment dressed in faux familiarity. People like Linda don't need to scream to make you feel small. They do it with smirks, with dismissive laughs, with offhanded remarks that leave you doubting your choices. They don't say, "Don't grow," but they make sure you feel silly for trying. They don't say, "Stay down," but they make sure you feel too old to rise. You may not even notice it at first, but over time, their words plant doubt like seeds. You begin to second-guess your joy. You start shrinking your wins. You tell stories smaller, apologize for taking up space, and worst of all, you begin to convince yourself that maybe you are too much, too ambitious, too late to try. And that's the poison, not the words themselves, but the silence that follows them. The dreams you stop chasing, the classes you stop going to, the stories you stop telling. So, what Diane did next. 2 weeks after missing class, Diane opened her French workbook again. She called her granddaughter and practiced over the phone. She even baked a cake with a handwritten label, Gâteau au chocolat, and she didn't tell Linda, because success doesn't need a doubter's permission. That's true. If someone resents your growth, that is their burden, not yours. You are not arrogant for rising. You are not selfish for shining. You don't have to dim your light to make others comfortable in the dark. Because real friends, real family, they celebrate you. They clap louder. They ask questions. They say, "Tell me more." Not, "Why bother?" And now, tag someone who supported your journey, the ones who never laughed when you dreamed, the ones who believed before you succeeded. And if you've ever held back your joy to make someone else feel better, today give yourself permission to take up space again. Post below. What's one small thing you're proud of this week? Whether it's learning a new word or simply walking 1 minute longer, we want to cheer for you. Because this isn't just a video, it's your life. And your growth deserves an audience that applauds with open hearts. And the last is the home where you're only welcome if you shrink. They say, come by anytime. But somehow, every time you leave, you feel smaller, quieter, dimmed. Not because they yelled, not because they hurt you outright, but because the price of admission into their home was your full self. I will tell you the story about Walter's smile that faded. Walter Reed, age 82, used to light up every room he entered. He was the kind of man who wore a hat just because it made strangers smile. The kind who made small talk with cashiers and remembered everyone's grandkids by name. In his late 70s, Walter began doing something bold. He started reading poetry aloud at his local library. Something he'd never done before. He felt alive again. But one weekend, Walter went to his brother Tom's house for a family cookout. It had been years since they gathered. He brought a worn copy of his favorite book, Robert Frost's collected poems, hoping to share a verse or two after dinner. As the night wore on, he stood up, gently tapping his glass. Would anyone mind if I read something? Tom chuckled. Come on, Walt. Not one of your deep thoughts again. We're just trying to relax here. Laughter followed, not cruel, but dismissive, and Walter sat down. Later that night, Walter told his daughter, "It's funny, I was proud of myself this year, but when I'm around Tom, I feel like I'm supposed to be the same as I was at 40. Joking, loud, simple, not thoughtful. That's the trap. Some people only make room for you if you stay in the shape they remember. They don't leave space for your softness, your depth, your spirituality, your new passions. They want you to stay in the script they know because it makes them comfortable. And the moment you change the lines, they edit you out. Let's be clear. You should never have to dim your light to stay in someone's life. You should never feel like being too happy, too curious, or too full of life is a problem. You're not too much. You're finally becoming all of you. And if someone doesn't make room for that version of you, it's not your job to make yourself smaller. It's your job to walk away taller. After. Walter still reads poetry, but now he reads it every Thursday at the Senior Center, where people clap, listen, and ask him to read it again. Because your soul deserves a home too. And sometimes you have to stop returning to old rooms that never made space for who you are now. Ask yourself, have you ever felt like you had to tone yourself down just to be accepted? Comment below, I will not shrink to fit someone else's comfort. Let's say it together, out loud, with pride. Because after 70, you've earned the right to be fully seen. Now, look back on the 5 doors we've opened today, only to realize they're the ones that must remain closed. The one who betrayed you, the one drowning in misery, the one who traps you in your past, the one who quietly resents your growth, and now, the one who only welcomes you if you shrink. Each of them wears a different face, but all of them have one thing in common. Their home isn't safe for the person you've become, and you, dear friend, have fought too hard, grown too much, and healed too bravely to step backward now. You are not obligated to return, not out of guilt, not out of family duty, not because they sent an invitation, not because they smiled when they opened the door. Politeness is not worth your peace, and nostalgia is not a good enough reason to offer your healed heart back to the people who broke it. Let me speak to you from the heart. If you're still watching this, you're not just curious, you're courageous, because you're willing to ask the hard questions. Who still deserves access to me? Where do I feel most alive? And who am I now, really? And those questions, they are the beginning of wisdom. You don't just age, You evolve. You don't just grow older, you grow deeper. Every laugh line is a map. Every scar is a signature of survival. Every wrinkle holds the memory of something you overcame. You are not a burden, you are a lighthouse. And your presence, your full, radiant presence, deserves to be met with light, not shadows. Try ask this. Have you ever closed a door and felt stronger for it? Tell us in the comments. What door did you stop knocking on? Your story might just give someone else the courage to do the same. And if this video moved you, if you felt seen, respected, or inspired, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. You're allowed to choose peace, even if it means saying goodbye, because your life, your beautiful, complex, evolving life, is still unfolding, and the people who truly love you, they'll never ask you to shrink to be accepted. They'll ask you to rise, and we will together. We're rooting for you. With all our heart, dear Seniors Life.